This is a message from the great beyond, dear listener. In a different realm, in a different reality, far, far away from the story and characters you know and love, there is another, similar yet different story. The ones you know are not the ones you'll recognize here. Your favorite heroes may be twisted and warped. Your perception of the ones you understand will be turned on its head. The world you're expecting is not what you will find here. The story you are about to embark upon is very, very intriguing.
The air blossomed with vibrant yet unsettling energy. Above, the sky was a canvas of swirling stars and ethereal power, painted in the hues of a glorious sunset. Below, the landscape was a bizarre tapestry of alien flora and fauna. Trees spiraled upwards like snaking serpents, their bark shimmering with unknown minerals. Grass, the odd shade of blue-green, rippled and swayed in a rather unsettling breeze. Creatures, unlike any found in today's age, hopped through the strange vegetation. Although beautiful, the idyllic scene was a deceptive facade, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing at its heart. Dominating the landscape, in the very center of this strange world, was a colossal tree. The gargantuan trunk held the mass of a skyscraper's girth, reaching for the swirling sky. Its leaves each pulsating with an unsettling mix of black and white energy, giving off an almost smoky, charred s'more appearance. At its base, a raging protest surged against a line of heavily armored knights. The crowd, a diverse array of beings with sharp ears, flowing hairstyles, skin tones ranging from all colors and body types. They all strained against the knights, as well as magical barriers that kept them at bay. They were shimmering fields of energy shaped like stars, all trapped within protective rings. These knights, stoic and unyielding, guarded a colossal, ancient platform. This platform, made of old stone, hummed with the same hypnotic white and black energy that permeated the tree. This area was adorned with ancient alien-looking architecture, curving arches and towering pillars. The platform itself was defined by an upside-down, curved triangle crest shape that had been chiseled in, pulsating with an expectant anticipation. "He can't do this!" the man bellowed, his face contorted with rage as he lunged towards the knight's barricade. "This is treason to the ancient ways!" Nearby, a woman, her skin a rich, dark brown and her hair a blazing orange, clutched a little girl who was her miniature replica. The child's wide orange eyes darted around in panic, reflecting the chaotic scene. A knight, without hesitation, shoved the woman back as she began the protest, his armored gauntlet colliding with her shoulder. "Hey!" the woman's husband roared, a towering figure identical to her in hair color, skin tone, and eyes. He shoved back against the knight, only to be met with a brutal counterpunch that sent him sprawling. The clang of metal on flesh echoed through the roaring crowd. "Foggy!" the woman shrieked, her voice cutting through the chaos. The protest intensified, a desperate plea against an incoming injustice. "He's a false ruler!" a voice screamed. "This breaks everything he's bound for!" another declared. "You can't allow this! Please do something!" A woman pleaded with one of the guards, her face etched with desperation. The guard, his visor down, simply looked away in shame. Just as the chaos reached a fever pitch, a crimson portal tore open in the air upon the platform. It pulsed with a blood-red energy, resembling a swirling star. It looked like a gaping wound in the fabric of reality. With thunderous steps, two figures emerged from the portal, flanked by more armored knights wielding gleaming spears. The lead figure was a being of imposing stature. His skin was the color of coal dark ash, with orange veins streaming down his cheeks. His presence radiated authority and chilling composure. His head was adorned with flame-like orange horns that resembled sharp claws reaching for the heavens. Two large ones sprouted from either side of his head, and two smaller, singular, sharper ones framing his jawbones. His orb-shaped face was etched with deep, wrinkled lines around a grim mouth, and his glowing orange eyes held a chilling emptiness. He wore a long, flowing robe of dark gray black, tinged with reddish-brown along the edges, creating a dramatic cape effect. Ornate, orange-gold markings and patterns adorned the robe, particularly around the shoulder and midsection. The symbols, intricate and deadly, seemed to burn with an inner fire. Clinging to his arm was a being whose very form was jarring and unsettling. Her head sported a pair of blood-red, stag-like antlers that clawed skywards. Her skin was a sickly, almost corpse-shaded grayish-white, nearly as pale as the moon's surface. Her legs were long, lean, and powerfully bent, ending in sharp hooves, giving her the appearance of a creature from forgotten myth. She was clad in crimson-red armor, a breastplate, leg bands, and arm guards. Beneath the armor, a flowing blood-red dress-like garment draped to the ground. Straps and wraps, reminiscent of ancient styles, crisscrossed her chest, legs, and arms, leaving large portions of her skin exposed. Her face was a grotesque assembly of pulled-back skin, bloodshot eyes, and sharp, protruding teeth. Horror mixed with beauty. Now introducing our protector, Core Matter and his life mate, Empress Sika, a knight announced, his voice amplified above the uproar. Core Matter and Empress Sika ascended to the center platform, offering seamless waves and nods to the seething crowd. "You strap sever!" a man shouted, only to be silenced by the blunt force of a knight's shield. "You're no matter, Birth! You're just a needy child!" The woman cried, for being brutally pushed back. Core Matter and Empress Sika remained impassive, their eyes meeting with unspoken understanding. "I told you this would cause a stir," Sika said, her voice a low, guttural growl. Core Matter huffed, his breath exuding an orange smoke.
People fear what they don't understand. They may not see it now, but in due time, they will.
He turned his gaze up to the stars.
But my ambitions for this empire are all in the name for a more prosperous future. For that to come to fruition, I must remain in this position, whether people like it or not.
Core Matter continued, his voice a low murmur. The starry sky above, it suddenly began to glow with an unnatural heavenly white.
Even if what I do today goes against the purpose of my existence.
Above, the clouds swirled, becoming a violent blend of light and dark energy, snaking across the abyss. The crowd grew increasingly violent, pushing against the knights with renewed fury, only to be met with lethal resistance. A four-legged warrior kicked a man backwards, one that began to attack him. This knight had sharp horns as well, somewhat similar to the being that Sika was. With a swift cleave, this knight sliced the man down out of pure rage. It was murder on full display. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as the man fell, his lifeblood a shocking shade of blue staining the ground. Behind the knight's helmet, a smile slowly spread across his face, a thrill of power coursing through him. Emboldened by this act, other knights began to escalate their violence, driving the protesters back with brutal force. The threat of death was palpable, and many began to falter. The swirling energy above intensified, bathing the world in an eerie yellow light. At its climax of power, something magnificent appeared. It was a single white, gold-plated pod. It was ancient in design, looking ethereal as it descended from the swirling chaos, gently levitating towards the platform. All eyes, save for those caught in the brutal skirmish, turned upwards. The pod, small and egg-like, hovered down before Core Matter and Sika. As it settled, it split vertically, the two halves folding back to reveal a highly advanced crib. Within, nestled in peaceful slumber, was a baby. His head was snow white, attached to an ancient mechanical body that seemed crafted by the gods themselves. He had 6 small horns upon his head, similar to Core Matter's. The baby, due to the chaotic noises around them, opened his eyes, revealing large, innocent blue pupils. Upon seeing Core Matter, he giggled, reaching out with his tiny hands. Carefully, Core Matter extended a finger, allowing for the baby's tiny hand to grasp it. His face remained blank for a moment, before his brow furrowed. "What are you waiting for? Kill it," Sika hissed, her fingernails visibly lengthening in the sharp-bladed claws.
"No,"
Core Matter replied, slowly withdrawing his finger.
"Our people are already divided. Killing an infant in front of them would only worsen our position on both sides."
He looked to the front of the crib. "Void," it said in an ancient language.
"To prevent further bloodshed and resentment, we will merely banish this Matterbirth into a dimension far from our own. His fate will be determined by whatever world he lands within."
With a flick of his wrist, Core opened a portal, revealing a dizzying interweb of connected worlds and dimensions. "It doesn't matter what the decision is. You know this will start a war," Sika warned, her claws retracting. Core Matter gave the baby one last look before sealing the hatch and eyeing the swirling portal by his feet.
"I know, but great movements inevitably bring conflict."
He then prepared to push the crib into the vortex.
"The age of balance has ended. It's time for our shadows to rise."
With that, he shoved the crib into the portal, triggering a renewed wave of rage from the crowd below. As the portal sealed shut, Core Matter took a deep breath, clasping his hands behind his back. Surveying the unfolding battle, he knew from this moment onwards that things would never be the same. His ambitions, his vision for the future, they were too important to abandon. This was only the beginning. Standing above the chaos, a small, sinister smile crept across his face. A smile that the little girl with orange hair caught, sending a shiver down her spine. Journeys Ahead, Expanded Universe, T. the Matterbirth. Chapter 1, A Stranger in His Own Home. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. The shrill blare of an alarm clock sliced through the quietness of an old room, a metallic shriek against the already frayed edges of a morning. It sat perched precariously on a nightstand, like a miniature soldier guarding the end of a restless sleep. It blared on and off, again and again, until a metal hand suddenly arose from the bedsheets and grasped for the offending device. There were a few clumsy slaps against the wood, when at last the silencer was smashed, bringing forth blessed silence. The one in the bed groaned, a deep, weary sound that resonated through his metallic frame. He pushed himself up from the old, matted bed, the springs protesting with a mournful squeal. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, the one who had been asleep winced as the morning sun, a vibrant, unwelcoming guest, streamed through a dusty window, painting the room in a harsh, unforgiving light. The sleeping figure hated mornings. The room itself was the personification of neglect and quiet desperation. The wooden floorboards groaned under their burden of dust and grime. An ancient fan, its blades thick with graying fuzz, whirred lazily overhead, creating a pathetic attempt to circulate the stale air. With a sigh, thick with resignation, the figure dragged himself towards the closet. It was a shallow space, barely large enough to contain the meager contains within. From the depths, he pulled out his daily uniform, a faded blue t-shirt, a pair of worn underwear, and wrinkled reddish-brown overalls, complete with matching gloves. Although, one of the overall straps had been broken. A quick glance inside reminded the figure of his living condition. Those were the only clothes he owned, save for a few tattered shirts and shorts. A sadness settled on his face as he turned away from the closet and shuffled out into the dimly lit hallway. He crossed to the bathroom, a small, utilitarian space that offered little comfort. He splashed cold water on his face, scrubbing away the last vestiges of sleep. Brushing his teeth, he stared into the cracked mirror, confronted by his own unique reflection. The face staring back was gentle, tired. He was a young man. Or so he liked to tell himself, despite the weariness etched around his glowing blue eyes. His head was perfectly rounded, snow white and smooth, save for the 6 slightly sharp horns that curved gracefully from his temples. His hair was a vibrant, shimmering blue, possessing a faint, almost otherworldly glow. But it was his body that was truly remarkable. It was humanoid, built on the proportions of a man, but fashioned from a smooth, steel-like material, a robotic body, yet one that possessed feeling, sensation, and the capacity of both joy and profound sorrow. He was a cyborg. The figure sighed, running a comb through his unruly blue hair, parting it neatly to the side. It was a small act of defiance against the despair that threatened to engulf him. Then he quickly dressed, pulling on the t-shirt and overalls, the familiar fabric a small comfort against his metallic skin. He then exited the bathroom, stepping into a cramped living space. The house was a small, one-story affair, a little more than a shack, really. It could have been charming once, but now it was just dilapidated and worn. The dining room was cluttered with a chaotic jumble of knickknacks and half-finished inventions. A metallic array of a restless mind and a dwindling of resources. The figure walked towards the fridge, his gaze drifting past the table, which was buried under a mountain of envelopes and official-looking notices, all bearing the grim message, overdue. As he passed the table, his eyes snagged upon a photograph. It was an old, faded print, showing a younger version of himself, his eyes wide with innocence and wonder, standing between an elderly human couple and a scruffy, happy-looking dog. They were all standing in front of the very house he now occupied. Scrawled along the bottom of the picture were the words, August 23rd, 1995. Happy 5th anniversary, son. Love Ma and Pa. A pang of longing shot through the figure's chest. He averted his eyes and continued towards the fridge. Opening the door, he pulled out a carton of milk, its expiration date dangerously close. He poured himself a glass. As he did, his gaze landed on a smartphone-like device sitting on the countertop, another invention he had made among the sea of junk. Reaching out, he touched the screen, activating the little device. Instantly, a face materialized on the screen, radiating a cheerfully typed-out smile.
Good morning, T. Ready for another thrilling day?
The name rang out. T, the crumbling owner of the home. T nodded tiredly, his expression betraying little enthusiasm. He then downed the milk in a few quick gulps, the sweet liquid doing little to quell the gnawing anxiety in his stomach. Yep, you can say that again, Jet. What's the date? He asked, quickly rinsing his glass in the sink.
It is currently March 10th, 2012, 8:30 a.m.
Jet chirped as T walked over to the front door and slipped on a pair of worn work boots. Noted. Look, I'm going to try and ask the boss for a raise today. Because... T trailed off, his voice heavy with unspoken worries. Just then, another slip of paper slipped through the mail slot in the door. He glanced down and shuddered. Another overdue notice. Because we're cutting it close. He finished, picking up the slip, signifying that the water bill had not been paid.
If all else fails, you can always resort to selling another one of your inventions. Make sure it's not me, though. Ha ha.
Jet rattled on, oblivious to the despair that was creeping in the T's heart. A dilapidated toaster with tiny peg-leg feet then waddled across the living room, making T look more grim. I can't stay afloat like that for much longer with stuff like that to sell, you know? He said, watching the toaster fall on its side. My last invention turned my neighbor's cow blue and I was sued. Besides, nobody likes my junk anyways. T said, his voice laced with weary amusement. He then turned to the coat rack and reached for his signature item, an old, worn blue cap. A crude stitch mark bisected the front, forming the letter T. It was a simple hat, but it was his, a comforting reminder of a time when things were simpler, when he wasn't burdened by debt and the weight of the world. He popped the hat over his blue hair, leaving only a small, defiant bristle poking out above his forehead. I'll be back at 6 as always, Jet. Remember to alert the backyard horns if the raccoon with 5 legs comes back, because I cannot deal with him anymore. T said upon leaving.
Will do. Have a good day, my creator.
Jet called out, prompting a small, almost involuntary smile from T. Thanks, he mumbled before stepping out of the house and into the harsh glare of the morning sun. The day was bright, uncomfortably warm for so early in March. T adjusted his hat, squinting against the light, feeling the early signs of spring hitting him with full force. Jeez, Illinois. You can never make up your mind on weather these days. He grumbled, descending the porch steps and surveying his overgrown yard. A simple dirt path led down to a dilapidated barn, and beyond that, to the main road. Surrounding him on all sides were endless fields of corn, uncut and left from the previous year. Their stalks were brown and brittle, remnants of the sloppy harvest. Scattered amongst the fields were other ramshackle buildings, neglected and forgotten. The distant barking of dogs and the mournful mooing of cattle from nearby farms provided the familiar soundtrack to his life. Same old day, same old tasks. T strode towards the barn. As he entered, he was greeted by an even more chaotic scene than the one inside his house. Half-finished inventions were scattered everywhere. T walked past a sputtering engine, a pile of wires, and a contraption that looked suspiciously like a self-buttering bagel slicer. Reaching one of the work tables, he took hold of a toolbox, its fabric and zippers stretched and torn. Beside the toolbox lay an old book, its cover proclaiming Paranormal Awakening, a story of hauntings and love. T picked it up, noticing a faded bookmark sticking out from in between the pages. Why not? He muttered to himself. The breaks aren't hour long anyways. Might as well have something to pass the time. He shrugged to his own quiet words, taking the tool bag and putting the book inside. He then turned towards an old, rusty bicycle leaning against the wall. He hopped onto the bike and prepared the pedal out of the barn. But before he fully left, his eyes were drawn to something in the corner. Partially hidden behind a stack of boxes and discarded machinery was an egg-shaped alien crib. Its once gleaming gold paint was faded and chipped, covered in a thick layer of dust. Mysterious symbols, shimmering like an odd form of braille, were etched into its surface. 4 markings in total that T had no understanding of. Although, he somehow knew he was supposed to. T sighed, his gaze lifting to a faded photograph hanging above the crib. It depicted the same elderly couple from the other picture, but this time, they were cradling a baby in their arms. The baby was him, a small, alien infant with glowing blue eyes staring up at the 2 smiling humans. 2 humans that had raised them as their own. A wave of complicated emotions washed over him. Love, loss, confusion, gratitude. He shook his head, pushing away the rising tide of emotions. Let's get moving. T sighed again, his shoulders slumping. He then pedaled out of the barn, leaving the crib and the memories it evoked behind him, heading down the driveway and towards the nearby town. As he pedaled along the dusty road, he passed several people. Some gave him awkward waves, hesitant smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Others stared, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. One mother even pulled her children closer, shooting T a disapproving glare. He looked away, adjusting his cap further down, trying to hide his face, to shrink himself into the background. Further and further he rode past dilapidated houses and boarded up storefronts, until he finally came to a stop outside of a large, decaying building on the outskirts of town. Scrawled across its crumbling facade were the words, "The Caco Factory." T huffed a tired breath, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. He then parked his bike against the building's fence and dismounted, his gaze sweeping over the dilapidated structure. Oh, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, he muttered, adjusting his hat one last time. He marched towards the front door, readying himself for another day of back-breaking labor, another day of barely scraping by, another day of trying to hold on to hope in a world that seemed determined to crush it. The familiar weight of his toolbox settled comfortably around his shoulder, though, a tangible reminder of his resilience. What remained, anyways? The shift began as mundane as any other weekday. T entered the familiar building, the scent of oil and metal clinging to the air. He clocked in, a chorus of sidelong glances washing over him while he headed to his assigned station. Routine was his unwelcome companion. First, the 9 a.m. conveyor belt duty. He stood tiredly, assembling parts with practiced motions, the pieces whisked away on the relentless belt to the next stage, again and again and again, the mechanical rhythm numbing his mind. At 10 a.m., he was relegated to vehicle checkups. Slipping on his worn gloves, T surveyed the line of aging trucks and cars. Fords, Chevys, Rams, the usual suspects, each carrying their own history of dents and rust. He crawled under them, diagnosing and noting the ailments of these metal beasts. 11 a.m. brought the disassembly line, being the reverse of his earlier task. He now pried apart tired devices, extracting bolts and wires with monotonous efficiency. And always there was Jerry. Jerry, with his perpetual sheen of grease, his overweight frame, and his endless stream of stories. The same stories repeated with a tiresome predictability. T did his best to filter out Jerry's drone as he methodically dismantled the objects that came his way. Back and forth he went between these 3. The hours blurred, a relentless cycle of assembly and disassembly. No different from the day before. No different from the day before that. A slow, grinding, soul-crushing shift. But the clock continued its march, and the promise of noon, of less respite, grew ever closer. With a grunt, T slid out from beneath a Jeep Wrangler, his face smudged with oil and grime. He savored the moment, relief washing over him as his weary body came to a standstill. About time, he muttered, pushing himself up from the roller pad. He stretched, a series of metallic clicks and pops emanating from his joints. As he turned towards the break room, a figure materialized, blocking his path. The man was a towering presence against T's modest 5'9" frame, and he glared down at him. "Hey, what do you think you're doing, freak?" He sneered. Two other employees materialized behind him, one with a cigarette dangling from his lips, the other thick-set and menacing. My break? Why do you ask?" T questioned, instinctively taking a small step back. "Break? Nah, you've got a gig to finish. Get back to it," the plumper man said, shoving T backwards. "Yeah, E.T., get back to it," the smoker chimed in, making T's stomach clench with unease. "Look, fellas, just give me 15 minutes to eat, and I'll be back on it. I've been working all day and a whole week straight. Come on." He tried to reason, but he was met with another shove. "Finish the job. You know how it goes. Do the hard labor for us, and maybe we'll spare you some extra pennies, yeah?" The instigator grunted, and T nervously adjusted his worn cap. "No, fellas. Whether you like it or not, I'm an employee like the rest of you. And if I don't get my break now, I don't get one at all." The lead man suddenly reached out, grabbing T by the left remaining strap of his overalls. "We're not asking you, freak. Ain't nobody want to see your bug-eyed ass in that room. All you're good for is doing the jobs we don't want to do. So better get back to it." T's heart slammed against his ribs. Let go of me," he pleaded, the sound barely audible amidst the escalating laughter of the surrounding workers. "Your ma and pa may have done what they could to make you feel at home, but at the end of the day, you're just a freak among us all." T's breathing grew shallow. I'm not a freak. I'm..." he stammered as the man's grip tightened. "What? You're just like us?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "You're the town burden, a mere tool. You aren't like us." He leaned in close, his breath reeking of stale beer and disdain. "You don't belong here, Martian boy." Something, a primal surge of defiance, ignited within T. It was a force he rarely gave off, and it came as a complete and utter surprise to everyone present. Suddenly, his 6 horns began to vibrate, a soft hum filling the air, and they shimmered with an otherworldly blue. Simultaneously, his eyes mirrored the same eerie glow, releasing a delicate trail of shimmering blue pollen-like effects into the air. The workers exchanged confused glances before a resonating hum spread throughout the factory. Then, a blinding light erupted. From T's horns emanated an energy pulse. The 3 men went flying and screaming, the force of the blast sending them crashing. One landed hard on the concrete floor, another tumbled atop a bewildered Jerry, and the ringleader slammed against the top of a nearby car, denting the roof and shattering the windshield. T stumbled backwards, gasping for breath, the exertion leaving him weak. The other workers stared at him, fear replacing their earlier malice. As the energy dissipated, T surveyed the chaos, his expression a mixture of shock and apprehension. "5 p.m. T read nervously on the clock as he sat in a chair within the factory's main office. Before him, with a dour look, someone spoke. "Sorry, kid. I'm gonna have to let you go." A balding man in a suit with a name tag saying Welsh said, his voice laced with a weary regret. What? No! Why? T's voice was a blend of fear and disbelief. Because you not only injured 3 of my employees, but you've shown that you have... Well, you appear to now be a ticking liability. Everyone can't seem to work now with you here. They're scared of you. Welsh's eyes held a touch of pity. Mr. Welsh, please! I didn't mean for that to happen! They were ganging up on me! That only happens when I'm under stress! Please! I need this job! T pleaded, nervously removing his hat, revealing his blue hair. Please, I'm about to lose my family house. Please! Nobody else will hire me! This was the one place that did! Welsh looked down, sighing and adjusting his spectacles. I'm sorry, kid. Really? He replied. Sorry for what? For treating me like I'm an outcast? I've lived in this town for 22 years and I've done nothing but try to fit in and feel at place in this world. But all I get in return is ridicule, time and time again. What more do I need to just make a decent living? Anger shimmered beneath T's desperation. Kid, look. I knew your ma and pa. They loved you very much. Always believed in you after they found you in the woods. They didn't give a damn if you came from outer space. You was their boy. Welsh looked away, his gaze distant. Through them, I know you're not a bad person. You're an amazing mechanic, skilled at your craft, a great inventor. Unfortunately, not everyone is your ma and pa. Most people in this area are assholes. He paused, looking back at T with a genuine sadness in his eyes. Look, T, I believe there's a place for everyone in this world. I know you care about what you have, but this place, this town, I don't think this is really where you belong in life. T looked up, his eyes weary and defeated. But I have nothing else, he whispered, watching as Welsh processed his termination of employment. Then search for it. I'd rather see you find something more enjoyable than dealing with these scumbags every day. Welsh looked directly at T. Everyone is destined for something. Whatever your destiny may be, I don't think it's here. T looked down again, his heart weary. I don't know what I'm going to do, he admitted. You will. I know you will. Welsh replied, reaching out a hand. Good luck out there, T. With a trembling hand, T shook it, the gesture filled with uncertainty and a daunting sense of the unknown future that lay ahead. As the clock struck 6 in the evening, the creak of the front door echoed through T's house, pulling him from the haze of exhaustion. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cluttered living room, once more illuminating the dust motes that danced in the fading light. T then dropped his tool bag with a heavy thud, the clang reverberating like a defeated sigh. From the countertop, Jet stirred the life. The small device's screen flickered on, displaying its signature smile, a cheerful face that always seemed out of place in moments like these.
Ah, welcome back, my creator.
Jet chirped, his synthetic voice warm and eager.
Did you secure that raise?
T slumped into a rickety chair at his kitchen table, his metallic hands trembling as he stared at the pile of overdue notices scattered before him. The envelopes, with their stark red stamps and urgent demands, mocked him like old enemies. I lost the job, he muttered, his voice laced with sorrow, the words hanging heavy in the air. Jet's screen shifted to a look of wide-eyed surprise.
Oh no! What happened?
T flipped through the envelopes with bitter precision, knowing full well none of them would be paid on time. Take a guess, he snapped, his tone sharper than intended. He hurled one of the envelopes behind him, where it landed with a flutter on worn wood flooring. Burying his face in his hands, he fought the urge to scream. The cool, unyielding surface of his metal skin offered no comfort, only a stark reminder of his mysterious origins.
Did your horns explode again?
Jet asked, cautiously, his voice softening. T winced, unclenching his fists to glare at his hands, sleek, silver appendages that gleamed under the dim light. Yep, self-defense, but nobody seemed to recognize that. He sighed, the sound raspy and defeated. We're gonna lose the house. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Rising slowly, T approached a shelf in the living room corner, where two urns sat like silent statues. They held the remains of the only people who had ever truly seen him as human. T leaned his head against them, the cool ceramic pressing against his forehead as tears he couldn't shed burned in his eyes. We're losing the house, he repeated, his voice now a tired whisper, raw with grief towards the ashes inside. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of Jet's internal mechanisms. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in strokes of vibrant purple, as if the world were oblivious to T's despair.
I recommend you go for a walk, my creator. Clear your head, breathe in the fresh air.
T stepped back from the urns, his gaze lingering on them for a moment longer. It's not going to change anything, he replied, his voice flat, devoid of hope. But he reached for Jet anyway, lifting the device from the counter and slipping it into his front pocket of his overalls. The familiar weight of his creation offered a sliver of companionship.
It will not change the facts,
Jet assured, his screen glowing faintly as his eyes peeked through the top of the overall pocket.
but it will ease your nerves just a bit.
Reluctantly, T made his way to the door, stepping out into the cooling evening. The world outside felt vast and indifferent, the purple hues of the sky fading into the approaching night. As the moon began to rise, T left and wandered forwards. He passed the fields, the town, all the way through until he reached the empty shallows of the forest behind the place he began to reluctantly call home. His steps were slow and deliberate, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The trees stood like silent witnesses, their leaves whispering in the breeze. But even the wildlife seemed to shy away from him. No rustling squirrels, no distant calls of birds. It was as if the forest itself had sensed his alienation. T glanced around, the isolation gnawing at him like a persistent ache. Kicking a loose rock across the grass, he watched it roll aimlessly, mirroring his own aimless existence. I don't understand, T murmured to the shadows. I have lived here all my life. I've done all the right things. Why does everyone just... Why do they hate me? T asked, his face scrunched.
Not everyone,
Jet replied, as his small face of reassurance gleamed as a light source.
Your ma and pa loved you.
T gently nodded, his horns catching the moonlight as he looked up to the stars, their distant twinkles offering no answers. Yeah, I know. But it's been hard without them. I could really use their advice right about now. The words spilled out, raw and unguarded, echoing into the night. T remained looking up for a long time, just gazing at the stars.
What is it now, my creator?
T hesitated, then sighed, his voice dropping to a whisper. I'm just wondering where I really came from. He trudged on, hurdling a fallen tree with effortless strength, his metal body moving like a machine designed for endurance. Every single day, I'm reminded of how non-human I am. My head looks like a snowball. I I have these horns, cotton candy blue hair, and my whole body is made of this flesh-like metal. He paused, hanging his head low. I came down in an egg-shaped pod to a world that isn't even my own. I'm literally Superman without the super or the man. I don't know who I am, Jet. He admitted. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. Why did I end up on Earth? What was my actual name? Who are my birth parents? There's so many whys and hows to fill a chasm, but never any answers. Jet's screen flickered, processing the depths of T's turmoil.
The cosmos is a massive thing, my creator. There's no telling exactly where you came from. But if there's one thing you should know, you are more of a human being than those who harm you. You've got heart, as your pa used to say.
T now reached the shoreline of a nearby pond and sank down on its bank, staring into the rippling water. His reflection stared back, a distorted figure of blue and silver, alien and alone. I tried to have one, he said, poking the water with a finger, watching the ripples spread as if he were reaching out to another version of himself, another being like him. But still, I just wish I had answers. I wish I could know who I really am. Just to have some peace of mind, to have some sense of history in my life. Jet nodded on its screen, a silent show of comfort. T closed his eyes, letting the night air just wash over him. I would just like to see my real world, even for a fleeting second. I wish I knew. As he spoke, an unfamiliar warmth spread through his horns, which began to hum with a soft blue glow. Unaware, the back of his hand ignited with an upside-down crest, shimmering in sapphire light. The energy pulsed, causing the water to ripple unnaturally.
My creator?
Jet interjected, his voice laced with sudden concern. T's eyes snapped open, but he was lost in his thoughts. I just want to see my homeworld, Jet. I just want to know what I really am. I want to know. The marking on his hand flared brighter, the blue light intensifying until the pond's surface shimmered with an otherworldly hue. I just want to know who I am! In an instant, a brilliant gust of energy erupted from T's palm. He yelped, being blown back as a star-shaped portal tore open in the water's surface. The air swirled violently, pulling in leaves, twigs, and stones with a ferocious vacuum. Gah! What the hell? T cried, his heart pounding as the vortex grew.
My creator! What have you made?
Jet exclaimed, his screen shifting to a mask of shock. I don't know! That's new! T shouted, panic rising as he felt the pull dragging him forwards. He quickly turned around and dug his gloved hands into the dirt, clawing desperately to escape. Oh no. No. The force was relentless. T's blue cap was ripped away from his head and then sucked into the portal, vanishing in a flash. My hat! He yelled. Then something else hurtled towards them. It was none other than the five-legged raccoon, its plump body tumbling through the air like a furry projectile. Oh, come on! He yelled as the creature slammed into his face. The impact broke his grip, and with a final desperate cry, he and Jet were yanked into the vortex. No! T's voice echoed as they crossed through the portal. In an instant, it sealed shut, leaving the forest in eerie silence. Not even the hoot of an owl daring to break the stillness, as the night itself had swallowed their absence whole.